She walked onto the stage with a quiet kind of bravery that did not announce itself loudly, the kind that comes from a life shaped by loss rather than applause. The lights were bright, the audience vast, and the judges seated with their familiar expressions of curiosity and caution, yet she seemed smaller than the space around her, not because she lacked presence, but because she carried something heavy inside her. From the first moment, it was clear that this was not just another performance meant to entertain for a few minutes and then fade from memory. This was a moment built from years of silence, from unanswered questions, from nights where hope and grief sat side by side. She introduced herself softly, her voice steady but layered with emotion, and shared that she was an orphan, the child of a Gold Star family, a term that carried more meaning than many in the room could fully grasp until that moment. Her parent had served, had given everything, and that sacrifice had shaped the course of her life in ways both visible and unseen. As she spoke, the audience leaned in, not out of pity, but out of respect. There was a sincerity in her words that could not be rehearsed. She talked about growing up with memories that were incomplete, shaped by stories told by others, by photographs that never changed, and by a longing to understand the person she had lost. Music, she explained, became her refuge. It was the one place where she felt close to the parent she barely knew, where emotions she could not put into ordinary words found a home. Every note she practiced was not just an attempt to improve her skill, but an effort to make sense of her own heart. She did not present herself as a victim, nor did she ask for sympathy. Instead, she stood there as someone who had learned to live with pain and transform it into something meaningful. When the music began, the atmosphere in the room shifted almost immediately. The first notes were gentle, almost hesitant, as if she were testing the space, making sure it was safe to open herself up. Her voice carried a fragile strength, the kind that trembles slightly but never breaks. It was not perfect in a technical sense, but it was deeply honest. Each lyric felt personal, as though it had been written specifically for her life. The audience could feel that she was not performing for fame or approval, but to honor someone she loved, someone whose absence had defined her journey. That intention gave her performance a power that went far beyond technique. As the song progressed, her confidence grew. The quiet beginning gave way to stronger phrases, notes that rang out with conviction and sorrow intertwined. It was as if she was telling a story through sound alone, guiding everyone in the room through moments of childhood confusion, adolescent anger, and eventualers often search for something authentic, something that reminds them why they fell in love with music in the first place. In this moment, authenticity filled the room completely. Her voice cracked slightly at one point, not as a mistake, but as a sign of real emotion breaking through. Instead of detracting from the performance, it made it more powerful. People in the audience could be seen wiping their eyes, caught off guard by how deeply they were affected. The judges, known for their experience and often tough critiques, were visibly moved. Their usual posture of evaluation softened into something more human. One leaned forward, hands clasped, another blinked repeatedly as if trying to hold back tears. This was not just a contestant on a stage, this was a young person offering a piece of her soul. The room was silent except for her voice and the music, and in that silence, a shared understanding emerged. Everyone present recognized that they were witnessing something rare, a moment where personal history and artistic expression merged seamlessly. Her background as a child from a Gold Star family added layers of meaning to every word she sang. The concept of sacrifice, often spoken about in abstract terms, became deeply personal through her story. The audience was reminded that behind every uniform, every medal, and every ceremony, there are families who live with the consequences long after the headlines fade. For her, music was not just a dream or a hobby. It was a way to connect with a parent she lost too soon, a way to keep their memory alive in a form that felt living and dynamic. The song became a bridge between past and present, between loss and hope. As she reached the climax of the performance, her voice soared with a strength that surprised even those who had already been captivated. It was as if she had gathered all the emotions she had been holding back and released them in one powerful moment. The sound filled the theater, and for a brief instant, time seemed to stand still. The audience was no longer a collection of strangers, they were witnesses to a deeply personal act of remembrance and courage. The final note lingered in the air, hanging delicately before fading into silence. That silence was profound. For a second, no one moved, no one clapped, as if breaking the stillness too quickly would shatter the moment. Then the applause erupted, loud and sustained, not just as a reaction to a good performance, but as an expression of collective respect. People stood, some cheering, others simply applauding with tears in their eyes. The judges rose as well, their expressions a mixture of admiration and emotional overwhelm. It was clear that this performance had reached them on a level that transcended their roles as critics. When she finished, she took a small bow, her eyes glistening, her breathing unsteady. The weight she had carried onto the stage seemed lighter now, shared with everyone who had listened. The judges spoke, their words carefully chosen. They praised not only her voice, but her courage, her ability to transform pain into beauty. One judge mentioned that performances like hers are the reason the show exists, because they remind everyone that talent is not just about skill, but about truth. Another acknowledged the sacrifice of her family and expressed gratitude for her willingness to share such a personal story. What made this moment especially powerful was the universality of her experience. While not everyone in the audience had lost a parent in service, many had experienced loss, grief, or the feeling of growing up without something essential. Her story resonated because it spoke to those shared human emotions. She became a symbol of resilience, showing that even the deepest wounds can give rise to something meaningful. The performance did not offer easy answers or a neat resolution to grief, but it demonstrated that pain does not have to be the end of the story. After the applause faded and the lights dimmed, the impact of her performance lingered. People talked about it not as a competition entry, but as a reminder of the power of art to connect, heal, and honor. For her, the stage was more than a platform. It was a place where she could finally speak directly to the person she missed, where she could say the things she never had the chance to say. The audience, in turn, became part of that conversation, sharing in her remembrance and strength. Her journey did not suddenly become easy because of that performance. The loss she carried was still part of her life, and the challenges she faced did not disappear. However, something important had changed. She had proven to herself and to others that her voice mattered, that her story deserved to be heard. That realization can be transformative, especially for someone who has grown up feeling defined by absence. Music gave her a way to define herself instead by presence, by expression, by courage. The idea of a gold star family often brings images of solemn ceremonies and formal recognition, but her performance humanized that concept in a deeply personal way. It showed the long-term emotional landscape that children of such families navigate, often quietly and without public attention. Through her song, she invited the world to see not just the sacrifice, but the love and longing that remain. She reminded everyone that remembrance is not only about honoring the past, but about supporting the lives that continue forward. In the days following the performance, many people would likely replay it, sharing it with friends and family, not because it was simply impressive, but because it made them feel something real. It served as a reminder that vulnerability can be a source of strength, that sharing one's story can create connections that transcend differences in background or experience. Her voice, once just a private comfort, had become a public expression of resilience. For the young performer herself, standing on that stage and singing from her heart was an act of courage that extended beyond the moment. It was a declaration that her life, shaped by loss, was also shaped by hope. It was a way of saying that while she could not change the past, she could choose how to carry it forward. Music became her language of remembrance, her way of turning silence into sound, grief into beauty. The performance did not rely on spectacle or dramatic effects. Its power came from simplicity and honesty. A single voice, a meaningful song, and a story rooted in real experience were enough to move an entire room. In an age where attention is often fleeting, moments like this stand out because they ask people to pause and feel deeply. They remind us that behind every story of sacrifice is a human being, and behind every human being is a story worth hearing. As the audience left the theater, many carried her song with them, humming the melody, reflecting on the lyrics, thinking about their own loved ones and losses. That is the true measure of a powerful performance, not the applause or the scores, but the way it continues to live in the hearts of those who experienced it. Her voice became part of a larger conversation about memory, resilience, and the enduring power of love. In sharing her story through music, she honored her parent in a way that felt alive and present. She showed that remembrance does not have to be confined to solemn moments of silence, but can be expressed through creativity, through the courage to stand up and be seen. Her performance was not just a tribute to the past, but a step toward her own future, one where her voice would continue to grow stronger, carrying with it the echoes of love, sacrifice, and hope. The image of her standing alone on that stage, singing with such raw emotion, remains a powerful one. It captures the essence of what it means to turn pain into purpose, to use art as a bridge between what was lost and what still remains. Her story reminds us that even in the face of profound loss, there is room for beauty, connection, and healing. Through her voice, she invited the world to listen, and in doing so, she reminded everyone of the shared humanity that binds us all.